It is. Hello, everybody. We seem to be having a few internet glitches today, such as life, Let's just go with the flow and see what happens. I'm Steve Costello. I'm with my colleague and friend Leo Farberg over there in Ireland. And if you followed what we were talking about last week, we touched on somatic awareness, but not for the first time, of course, where it frequently comes up. And it's coming up again today. And I'm going to start the ball rolling by talking about culture, a little bit about culture, a little bit about societal conditioning. And many of my clients come to me where they're prioritizing cognitive processes and rational thinking over bodily awareness, what's going on in the body. So everything's happening up here, there's nothing happening in the rest of it. And I would argue that that's not a good thing. Why is it not a good thing? Because if we're doing that, that leads us to view the body as a secondary thing to the mind. So if we're neglecting physical sensations, that's not good for us, especially when it's in favor of these intellectual or emotional analyses or processes or whatever we want to call them. So where shall we go with this one, Leo? I think this is a great subject, and it's one that all of us need to take note of, me included.
I completely agree that it's probably the most important subject nowadays because people think that uh, becoming more productive, thinking more clearly, getting more stuff done is the priority, but that's the destructive way, really, towards ourselves, thinking that we could fit more into 24 hours and do it all with our mind, because actually most of people of human existence is the body. It's most of the brain power is serving the bodily functions, and how this, like, what we want to think as a machine, when it hurts we bring it to the doctor as if it's a car. Okay, fix this part. And doctors also think that are taught this way, that okay, this is this part of this system, and we just give a pill or do something to fix it. And so really we are not taking into consideration the real way the humans operate, and we misuse the our, like, not just the body, we misuse ourselves and abuse that brings to abuse.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Brilliant. One of the things I've noticed with many of my clients, and we mentioned this last week, we're really good at storing unprocessed emotions in our bodies. So we get involved in all that work stuff, for example, we dive in there. And another thing that we've got to take note of as well relating to work is that frequently people tell me, I have to push this stuff. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. Why have you got to do that? Because my manager says I must. And if I don't, I'm maybe going to lose my job, not get my contract renewed, or there's a ton of things that can happen. So you've got all of that going on as well. And that's another distraction. So it's something we
Mhm.
need to talk about. Something that I work at frequently especially in the coaching room, as it were, is how can we manage our managers? And there's a ton of books about that stuff, but we need to know how we can manage our managers because that will enable us to calm things down a little bit if we're doing it correctly, which
Mhm.
is a big challenge in itself. That's not something we can really talk about today. Um, but the other thing as well that comes up, and it comes out of the workplace really, is this idea of how we are distracted. We're so distracted because of our work, for example, because we're being overstimulated by the stuff, whatever the stuff happens to be in our environment. It might be relationships. It doesn't need to be just work. But if you think about the workplace, modern environments, I have a client at the moment who works in the techie world. So I
Mhm.
really don't get most of what she talks about when she talks work. You know, a bit of it, yeah, sure, I can understand some of it, but some of it's like, whoa, really? But it's really distracting. It's massively stimulating on the brain.
Mhm.
And like I said, our modern environments are filled with technological distractions, social media. There's a constant noise on social media. If you allow yourself to
Mhm.
become embroiled in what's happening in social media, you're kind of blown out of the water and you lose connection with all kinds of
Yeah,
stuff, and which obviously isn't good for us. All of that pulls our attention away from what's going on internally. So the question is, what can we do about it? We can't switch it all off, especially if we work in the techie world. So what are we going to do? How are we going to manage this? What do you think?
I think everyone needs to make a decision. And because and before and to make such a decision, you have to learn a bit more and become aware of the importance of um, being in silence, giving some time to uh, go inside and concentrate on the feelings, on the state of the body, because it's like scanning, it's like an evaluation, because our body cannot talk in words and cannot send emails or memos. It starts hurting, it starts buzzing, it starts getting tired, but we see it's just some like some something that gets on the way of the productivity of the creative process of something, and we are annoyed by it, and that's it. But actually the nervous system and the body in like as a whole uh, has this marvelous ability to self-regulate, and it sends us signals that you're tired, you have to take a break. You're being distracted. You have to concentrate, but you are lacking concentration. That means you don't have enough resources in your brain, in your nervous system, to endure this pace, or endure this amount of information, or to fight this amount of noise. And so you need to take mindful breaks, mindful planning, because when we talk about planning, we tend and we think that's the right thing to do, to put more into the plan, more goals, more volume, like for achieve more achievement. But that's not the way it works. The body needs to be taken care of because it's your vehicle, actually. It, if you don't mind it, it'll break. If you can buy a new car, you cannot buy a new body, though many technologies promise us. But it's like, okay, let's kill the horse first, and then whip the dead horse, and then like kind of try to resuscitate it,
Yeah,
and then bring it back to work.
yeah, I love that. That's a great way to put it. One of the things that comes up frequently, and you don't need to be a psychologist to hear this stuff. People will complain, I've got a stiff neck. My neck really hurts. And it's because maybe the way they're sitting when they're working, because they're holding their shoulder, because they're tense. Okay, I'm exaggerating this
Mhm,
tension right now. The
mhm,
tension builds up and it builds up and it builds up, and the body remembers it. And when you give it some more, it remembers some more. And eventually, you've got such a pain in the back of your neck that you do need to go to a doctor or somebody
mhm,
to help relieve that tension. But really, it wasn't the body, it was what was going on elsewhere that created the tension. So we need to look for ways and means. Now, one of the things that I'm not going to apologize for repeating this, I talk frequently about breathing. People forget to breathe. That sounds stupid because if we don't breathe, we die. But they forget to look after their breathing. They forget to notice their breathing. They forget to calm their breathing when the going gets tough and we start breathing too quickly. I know some people who hold their breath when they get stressed, and
mhm.
that's not helpful, not at all. So if we can start with breathing, even when we think we're okay, I'm just going to stop for a minute. I'm just going to focus on my breathing for 1 minute. And I'm going to do that at least once an hour for the whole workday. Just 1 minute, focus on my breathing, whether I feel I need it or not. Because after some time, it becomes a habit. And this is a really cool, positive habit to have. So that is a good place to start. It's about creating space. It's creating space that helps our body. It also helps our mind as well when we stop to breathe. So it slows everything down a little bit. And then we can start to feel safe within the body. We're not feeling, oh, my shoulder so hurts or whatever. Now, there are more advanced breathing exercises, that thing that I call breathing through the pain, where you focus on wherever the discomfort is and teach yourself to feel as though you're breathing through I'm using my shoulder because you can see it. I have no pain there whatsoever. So we can focus on that area of the body to help relieve some tension. And that helps long term. The whole process, though, that Leo and I are talking about is quite complicated. There's a lot to it. And I'm kind of trying to keep it a little bit light because too deep is too much, perhaps, for some people. Here's another thing you can do. Ask yourself this question. How am I feeling? Ask yourself up there. You don't need to say it out loud if you don't want to. How am I feeling? And notice, what's the body telling you? I have a friend who's absolutely incredible at this, but she works on what I call very slow speed. So she asks herself questions as they come up. So rather than, I'll just ignore that, I've got to keep going, got to keep going. She stopped. What's happening right now? Why am I feeling like this? What's going on? So she asks herself those quite simple questions on the surface, but they reveal a lot to her about what she needs to be doing. She's not a psychologist, by the way. She's a management specialist. But that's one of the things she adopts. So what about you, Leo? What do you suggest that people should be thinking about?
People don't just forget to breathe, they forget to notice elementary things like going to the bathroom and need to go to the bathroom and need to have a glass of water, need to change the position. And where we should start is just noticing what's going on, because we go to the toilet when there is an official break. We eat because we have a break, not because we are hungry. Or we use food for seizing our anxiety. So we use food in the wrong way. And that's because we don't listen to ourselves. We don't listen to the body. And uh, then we go to our GP and say, okay, I have an eating disorder, I have a depression, I have some bowel problems. And GP doesn't have time. And sometimes, sorry to say that, not enough qualification to evaluate some non-medical things that are not a disease. And they said, oh, here is your prescription. I think, and everyone is satisfied because the protocol is done. But there is no personality, there is no the real body needs considered, and it will not come from the officials. Your personal awareness, your personal real well-being, not again the protocol official one, not what you see on Facebook or Instagram. It's your personal signature style of creating your well-being, not the success, not the achievement, not the bank account, but you are going to use it. And many people, another thing I want to mention and try to be short, another thing comes up when somebody starts paying attention. People tend to recognize how much is squeezed into that subconscious thing, into the body, how much there is, and that scares them.
Yeah.
And I know why many people don't want to take a break, don't want to go inside, because there's too much to face. But at the same time, it's not going anywhere. It's still there. It's like toxic waste in your system. And in many ways, in biological sense, in neurological sense, in mental, in emotional, all these things, this is where probably psychology is the doorway. It's not the only tool, but usually psychology, using psychology and building up your awareness and creating your mindful way of taking care of yourself, it's a doorway. There are many tools, but you have to start somewhere and start with the body, start with the awareness.
Uh, There's some brilliant points here. We could talk all day.
Yeah,
This,
so
this is
don't
the
forget
danger.
to tell us to stop.
Yeah. Let's just cover something that we should do perhaps in more detail in the next episode of this, because I think the conversation needs to keep going. And it's
Mhm.
not done today, and it probably won't be done next time either. One of the things that people do, not only in my experience, but if you read the psychology journals and so on and so on, there's a lot of information about unresolved trauma or chronic stress. There's loads of it. And one of the things that happens with people is that when they're in let's say somebody's chronic stress, they don't stay in the body. In other words, they cease to notice what is going on all around them. So they get out of the body. What are they doing when they're out of the body? They're thinking about what could be, what might have been, what will happen if I don't do this or I don't do that. There's a ton of stuff flying around up there, and everything else gets left behind. It's almost as though everything else that matters becomes a casualty. And then the whole body becomes a casualty. And suddenly they're taking time off work because they can't keep going in extreme circumstances. And that we want to avoid. We want to avoid that for everybody. So we need to, as I said earlier, talking about breathing, we need to adopt simple processes to look after ourselves. Some of us might need to see Leo and I, or Leo or I. Some people may need that. They might be down that road where they need psychological support. And that's not a big deal. That's not something to be ashamed of. It's something that actually helps. So if you feel
Mhm.
like you're in a difficult place right now, or even in an awkward place that might just need a few tweaks, leave us a message, send us a direct message, leave a comment, and we'll get back to you. We'll help out. No problem. So do you have any final words, Leo?
It's just a little joke. I have a client here in Ireland, and I call myself Lenny here. I just chose the word because my name is kind of difficult to pronounce and to remember. And we've been working for some months already, and she says everybody needs a Lenny. So
Brilliant.
I think everybody needs someone to talk to process things, to go a bit deeper, to get help when it gets too deep,
Yeah.
to have somebody's hand to grab on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've
That's
got another idea, but I think we'll talk about this next time. Otherwise, we'll
okay. We'll pick it
really
up.
can talk the whole day.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, I talked about asking yourself that question, how am I feeling? So next time you notice a stiff neck or whatever it happens to be, something uncomfortable in the body, it may indeed need medical attention. So don't ignore things thinking that's just me and my mind. Maybe you do need medical attention. But another thing to do is just ask yourself, hey, what's going on here? What is this? Ask the question, but give time for the answer to start filtering through. The answer might be dead simple because I'm sitting in a bad environment, I'm not that, my posture's rubbish, I'm stressed, whatever it may be, you may get some information. Okay, more next time. Have a brilliant day, week, whatever. Take care. We'll speak to you again really soon.
See you next Monday.
Yeah.